As I exhaled, my breath mingled with the chilly evening air, creating wisps of steam. Pushing open the steel door adorned with a small grated window, I made my way into the hallway. To my right, a junction box hung on the wall, housing a switch that controlled the electricity supply. Flicking it on, a light bulb above me instantly illuminated the space. Perfect, we have power. Placing my bag on the floor, I took a moment to survey my surroundings. The room before me, serving as a spacious living room, boasted a grand fireplace at one end. Positioned opposite were two high-backed armchairs draped in green upholstery with a quaint serving table nestled between them. Adjacent to a window offering a view of the serene lake, an oak table stood proudly. Adorning the glossy log walls were a selection of hunting-themed prints and a collection of antlered medallions from deer and roe deer hunts. Dominating the area above the fireplace, a full-length wolfskin stretched out, showcasing an antique flintlock rifle and a hunting horn sheathed in brass leather. And there, against the wall above the sofa, an oriental rug, felted to perfection, proudly displayed a collection of ancient musical instruments I had gathered from my journeys across various lands. This was no feminine space, lacking pink kittens and elephants. There were a couple of doors leading out of the living room, one guiding you to the kitchen and the other to a snug bedroom. I unloaded the groceries from my bag and stowed them away in the spacious, dual-compartment fridge. After that, I wandered back into the living room, carrying a bottle of Irish whiskey with me. The brief autumn dusk was sneaking in, but from the window, I could still see the towering pine trees alongside the lake's edge. Down on the shore, a black, overturned boat was lying on the sand, seemingly at rest. Perched on its pitch-coated underside were several seagulls. Every now and then, as if spooked by some unseen threat, they would take off into the sky, shrieking over the water. Taking my time, I got the fireplace going. It belched a bit of smoke initially, but soon enough, it settled down and the smoke lessened. I placed the bottle on the table and sank into a chair. I yearned for something to shake off the sudden ennui that had settled over me. Feeling too lazy to hunt down a glass, I took a swig straight from the bottle. A warm sensation spread through my stomach. My mind was blank. All I wanted was to sit quietly and gaze into the fire. The logs were gradually burning down, transforming into glowing red embers adorned with a delicate black lattice, with small flames flickering lazily over them. After what felt like an eternity, I finally found myself in a rare moment of leisure. Out of nowhere, an impulse took hold of me, leading me to retrieve a delicately perfumed note. Without hesitation, I dialed a number that was utterly unfamiliar to me. Much to my surprise, the recipient on the other end answered the call with lightning speed, as if they had been anxiously anticipating my ring. I owe my physique and looks to my parents. Quite lyrical, isn't it? Officially, my name is Penelope. Yet everyone, even my folks, chose to call me Penelope. I was raised in an average household. Though I was an only child, it didn't pamper me excessively. My dad had his heart set on having a son, but instead he got me. Consequently, I ended up with a good chunk of a boy's upbringing. Around 8th grade, my dad introduced me to biathlon, and from that point on, sports became a significant part of my life. While I didn't excel to grandiose levels, I held my own. My forte was undoubtedly the marksmanship aspect. Acing the shooting range meant I avoided the penalty loops and kept pace with my more challenged competitors. Throughout university, I remained active in sports, and by the age of 20, earned the title of Master of Sports in Biathlon. There came a moment when I realized I had had my fill of skiing, prompting a shift towards focusing solely on shooting. Surprisingly, within 2 years, by my junior year, I had achieved the status of Master of Sports in shooting. Beyond the realm of sports, painting and the arts captivated me deeply. Determined, I set my sights on the University of Culture to study art history, and I got in without a hitch. The years of education whizzed by in a blur. I earned my diploma and gained a bit of recognition among certain circles of budding artists and avid collectors. By the time I successfully attributed a 15th century Byzantine icon, which later sold at a Christie's auction for the price I had suggested, I found myself being called upon by esteemed and affluent collectors to appraise their own treasures. Gaining notoriety and esteem among clients and peers offered not just prestige, but also the perk of solid financial rewards. Soon enough, I was able to upgrade to a charming 2-bedroom apartment right in the heart of the city, while also acquiring a quaint wooden cottage by the shores of a sprawling lake nestled deep within the Berezhenskaya Pushcha wilderness. I was youthful and radiant. With my earnings, I adorned myself in stylish attire and engaged in sports to stay in fabulous shape. It felt like the right moment to settle down and start a family. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Yet there I was, striving to find the perfect husband candidate. Don't get me wrong, there was no shortage of admirers. I often found myself in the lively haunts where they gathered, clubs and billiard halls. Whenever I extended an invitation, a flock of men, each with distinct looks, would rush to attend to my call. Tall and short, fair and dark, wealthy and moderately well off, they all vied for a chance to present their hand and heart to me. I wasn't holding out for a fairy tale prince on a majestic steed, but like any woman, I yearned to discover my soulmate, the one with whom I would grow old, sharing every moment until the day we both departed this world together. Ah, therein lay the quandary. Countless men perceive a woman as a lesser being, a few steps below on the social ladder. Their inherent bias is often tinged with an involuntary sexism, an unsavory blend of condescension and desire. They perpetuate the fallacy that women are merely gold diggers. Honestly, it seemed to me that these very accusers were the ones lacking in funds. To them, women are synonymous with infidelity. They cling to the stubborn belief that all women are unfaithful. The world in their eyes is in disarray, with every woman painted as a villainess, as though fidelity and purity were exclusive to men. For a lot of the modern male populace, a woman is nothing more than a plaything, a household appliance with mascara. And so, amidst the eclectic whirl of a bohemian gathering, I crossed paths with a young chap named David. I must admit, he didn't particularly stir any interest in me. He was just another cookie-cutter guy with those so-called male virtues, and a name I've never been fond of. But hey, as the old saying goes, there are plenty more fish in the sea. Sure, here's a reimagined version of your text. David moved in with me, and we settled into a common-law relationship. It was pretty much like any other couple's life. There were dirty socks strewn throughout the apartment, the occasional whiff of alcohol lingering in the air, and that annoyingly casual babe tossed around like it was nothing. Not to mention his mother's weekend visits. We shared a year together. Then he started moaning about wanting kids and making things official. I found myself agreeing to it. In October, I had to journey to another city to conduct an examination of an icon. I booked a flight and hurried home to get packed. I tried reaching out to David time and again, but his phone was turned off. Once I got home, I dashed up to the third floor practically in a sprint. The apartment was eerily silent. I wandered into the kitchen. Nobody in sight. Likely, everyone was catching some z's after the graveyard shift. Curiosity led me to peek into the bedroom, and lo and behold, a scene unfolded before my eyes that left me speechless. There, positioned on all fours and gripping the headboard, was an unfamiliar girl, stark naked. Positioned behind her with a triumphant smirk plastered across his face was my live-in boyfriend, equally bare. His friend, also unclothed, was in mid-thrust, one hand tangled in her locks. All she could manage were melodious moans synchronized with the rhythmic motion. Now and then her forehead would thump against the wall as she passionately exclaimed, "Yes, yes, more." The entwined duo was so absorbed in their fervent engagement that the world outside might as well have ceased to exist. It was like watching toddlers engrossed in their play. I stood there momentarily captivated by this display of raw human interaction, before clearing my throat loudly and chiming in with a courteous hello. Startled, David sprang like a cat from a hot roof, scurrying to the nearest corner. Hastily, he shielded his nether regions with his hand while crooning a forgotten tune. "It's not what you think," he exclaimed desperately. The girl, in a hurried tiptoe that resembled a mouse scampering away, sidestepped past me, gathering her discarded garments as she went. "Penelope, you and I are civilized individuals. Let's view the incident as a common source of embarrassment." David, concealing his shameless gaze, attempted to convince me that the situation held no significance. I patiently listened to his extensive verbal flow before wordlessly indicating the exit. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. You'll plead on your knees. Damn you." Now I too am subjected to such derogatory language. He neglected to explain for what reason I would be begging him. I flung his hastily packed bag onto the landing and firmly closed the door behind him. After some time, his mother reached out via phone. I saw no reason to engage in conversation and promptly ended the call. She received a well-deserved reprimand, striking at her insufferably inflated ego. That was the extent of it. Subsequently, she sank onto the couch and wept. I quickly resolved the issue at hand. The icon concealed a secondary compartment, revealing its inauthentic nature. It was evident that what I was looking at was a forgery, a recreation painted over an ancient board, mimicking a renowned 16th century religious artifact. With no particular rush, or rather no pressing engagements beckoning me elsewhere, I opted to travel home by rail. As I neared the train station, the familiar beep of my phone alerted me. The transaction had successfully processed, and the funds were now securely in my account. Securing a ticket in the SV class without any hassle, I found my seat with ease. With some time to spare before we set off, it was the perfect opportunity to get comfortable and switch into something more relaxed for the journey. The trip back home would last just shy of a full day, and I was intent on enjoying this brief respite in utmost comfort. I leisurely slipped into a tracksuit, retrieved a bottle of cognac from my bag, and poured it into a plastic cup. From my perch by the window, I occasionally took small sips, observing the world outside. Suddenly, the compartment door swung open, revealing a fellow voyager, a vibrant woman in her 40s. She swiftly stashed her bag beneath the shelf and joined me by the window. "Headed to Moscow, eh?" she quipped, offering a smile with a supple curl of her lips. "You know, cognac goes down better with a little something to munch on." I returned the smile, my interest piqued. "Care for some?" I inquired, producing a clean glass. "Absolutely. I'm Charlotte." The woman introduced herself, delving into her bag and pulling out a lemon and a box of chocolates. "Penelope," she called out, tearing off the cellophane and revealing the treasure within. "Help yourselves." After 30 minutes, it seemed like Charlotte and I had been friends for ages. I opened up about my life and my ex-husband, who didn't quite turn out as I had hoped. Charlotte, on the other hand, wasn't as chatty, yet she skillfully kept our conversation alive. When the cognac ran dry, she wasted no time pulling out her own bottle, and the merriment rolled on. The heat in the compartment became noticeable, prompting me to unbutton my blouse and eventually peel it off, leaving me in just my bra and workout pants. Charlotte followed suit, shedding layers as well. We ensured the door was closed tight, wanting to avoid any awkward interruptions from an overly curious fellow traveler or an overly enthusiastic conductor. And so the revelry continued. I felt the shadows of longing and bitterness fade away. Life started to feel clear and manageable. I tried to brush off the way Charlotte's eyes lingered a bit too long on me, rather than letting it distract from our newfound connection. It was becoming quite stifling. I attempted to crack open the window, but alas, it had been firmly shut for the winter months. That's when Charlotte chimed in with a rather daring idea that I should strip down entirely. I acquiesced, sliding down my athletic pants and remaining dressed only in my panties. Charlotte followed suit, and there we were, half-clothed, sitting close together, engaged in light-hearted banter. Yet the conversation began to take an odd turn. Charlotte started sharing stories about her friends, delving into their unfulfilled romantic lives. She lamented that most guys were utterly terrible and emphasized how only women can truly comprehend one another. I simply nodded along, wearing a silly grin. As she scooted nearer, her hand began to trace the inner part of my thigh, all the while she continued her chatter. A wave of warmth enveloped me, sweeping from my belly to my chest. I mustered up the courage to glance at Charlotte, but in my anxiousness, my fingers grazed her bosom. Charlotte stood motionless for a moment, but then, without warning, she seized me and pressed her lips against mine in a passionate, lingering kiss. Simultaneously, her other hand deftly unfastened the clasp of my brassiere. I opened my eyes and glanced at the clock. There was still roughly an hour until M. Peering out the window, I noticed the dawn breaking. The faint light was illuminating the surroundings. Raindrops, streaked by the breeze and the train's velocity, danced across the glass. Charlotte was absent from the compartment. On the table lay a note tinged with the scent of high-end perfume. "Everything was fantastic. Your wonderful kisses," it read, along with the phone number. I lingered there for a moment, replaying the memories of last night and the night before. There was nothing I regretted. It felt like a satisfying conclusion to my work, like a little bonus, if you will. To be honest, I wasn't quite sure how to process what had transpired, yet one thing was clear. It had been a positive experience for me. While I had no intention of pursuing this new connection further, I tucked the note into my purse. Outside, the suburbs unfolded. The doors of nearby compartments thudded shut. I hastily dressed, grabbed my bag, and scanned the area, ensuring I hadn't left anything behind before stepping into the corridor. My hometown welcomed me with a brisk, biting wind that sent a flurry of fallen leaves swirling. I hopped onto the platform and made my way toward the station exit. The fire in the wood has finally extinguished. I had to acquire more. Grasping the weighty door, I ventured out onto the porch and commenced ascending the stone steps that led to the terrace. In an unexpected moment, my equilibrium betrayed me, causing my feet to propel forward and my arms to flail aimlessly as I tumbled backwards, colliding with the stone porch and striking the back of my head. The last sensation I recall was a sharp, piercing ache in my left arm. Upon awakening, I found myself gazing at a pristine white ceiling. My capacity to turn my head was severely limited. An unfamiliar gentleman was perched upon a stool beside me, firmly clasping my arm and monitoring my pulse. "You're awake. That's splendid news." "Where am I?" I struggled to utter the words. "You're in the hospital, my dear. No need to fret. It's all in the past now. I am your attending physician." He tenderly patted my hand. "You are free to return home for a couple of days." What on earth just happened to me? You lost your footing and banged the back of your noggin against the stones. It really could have turned out much worse. Not to mention, you also nicked your hand on the axe while leaning against the wall. If it weren't for your buddy, you might have bled out. A buddy? Hooray! She managed to bring you to the hospital just in the nick of time. To stem the bleeding, she wrapped a nylon sock around your injured arm. Time was of the essence, and our supply of blood was running low, but we were able to transfuse her blood into you. Fortunately, her blood type and rhesus factor were a perfect match for yours. Where is she? She's right here in the corridor, adamantly refusing to leave. We had to withdraw nearly half a liter of blood from her. At the moment, she's fast asleep on the cot. The doctor just woke up. You should take a rest and regain some strength too. Suddenly, the door emitted a creaking sound. "How are you feeling?" Charlotte inquired, her voice barely above a hush. Truth be told, I was utterly baffled. How on earth did she appear at my doorstep? Charlotte's gaze bore into mine, filled with empathy and concern. Tears glistened in her eyes, adding a touch of vulnerability, particularly accentuated by her wearing just one stocking. "How on earth did you locate me?" I questioned, perplexed. "You rang. I was worried sick that something bad had gone down, so I hightailed it right to your side." She blurted out, apprehensive that I might cut her off, disinterested in hearing her out. There you were, sprawled out on the veranda, blood pooling around you. I mustered up the strength to haul you into the car and rush you to the hospital. She gingerly tucked in my blanket, almost as if she was scared I'd brush off her touch. "So, how did Mr. Husband feel about all of this?" "Did I mention that I'm married?" she murmured, her gaze dropping towards the floor. "I should leave and let you recover." "Hold on," I interjected, gesturing for her to take a seat on the edge of the bed. With an effort, I lifted myself up and wrapped my arms around her neck, bringing our lips together in a tender embrace.